what a true sentence is. My point of view. Okay, so you need a good society. That means you have to work, and that means your life is going to be stressful. And so, how can you be happy when your life is stressful? Well, these people are referred to as Stoics. Comes from the Stoa, which is the porch. In fact, it was the painted Stoa, so it was called the Stoa Poikile, where Zeno taught as the earliest, perhaps, Stoic that we know of. And the idea is that you can have a Stoic attitude towards things. So when I'm sitting at the board meeting and it's boring, the only reason that it's boring or the way you react to the situation is because you let yourself be bored or you let yourself get upset. If you have sufficient control over your own state of mind, you're not bored. You're not stressed out. You're in charge of your own stress level. The Stoics teach that your self-control, your mind control over your own state of mind is the key to being happy. It reminds me too of one of the statements that you see that the Marines love to promote: embrace the suck. And you can just you're sloughing through the mud with your gear and barbed wire, and they're shooting at you, and instead of being like, oh, I gotta get home, mommy. No, if instead, Marines that do that, that's not really good. Marines instead say, oh, I love this. Oh, this is being a Marine to the max. I'm embracing the suck. Right? If you think about it, and yes, I'm freezing. I love it. Get out there and just do it. Mind over matter.
Because if you don't mind, it doesn't matter.
Very nice. Yeah.
I kind of stuttered at the beginning, but you know what I mean.
Or if you're not laughing or crying, that's another place.
I suppose. Marines that cry, well, I have seen Marines crying because of the loss of their fellow Marines and others, so they're not total barbaric animals. They're not, Conan,
Emotions.
They're living, for those democratic ideals, etc. But there are Marines, at least, right? If they're part of the Wagner group, I don't know what their goals are, right? You're familiar with the Wagner group. But, and the Roman soldiers were taught to be Stoics, to embrace the suck, etc. And so the Stoic attitude is basically, the Epictetus was probably in the board of assistants helping Nero. Nero was absolutely crazy, but they kept the government going because they just put up with it and did the best job they could, etc. So the Stoic point of view, and by the way, that can be that thesis can be blended in lots of other ways. One of the best examples of that is Viktor Frankl. And it's interesting, he was one of the Jewish doctors. Yes, Ellie?
Have you given us a quiz question yet, by the way?
No.
Okay.
'cause I haven't gotten to it yet.
Or space.
I am trying to race to get there, but at the same time, I've got to cover the folks that go there, and gosh, I've only got like 6 minutes.
You got it. You got
Okay,
this.
so Viktor Frankl is an ideal example of this because he was a psychiatrist, Jewish psychiatrist in the Holocaust, living in, I think, 3 of the different camps. He was a doctor, so they had him in the medical clinic of the different camps. But nonetheless, they treated him just pretty much the way they treated everybody. And so he was starving, made to work way beyond normal capacity. And he noticed how his body reacted to what was going on around him. And he retreated intellectually into his own mind and watched how they treated him. And that protected him from being damaged by the way they were treating his body. And he survived and ended up then becoming a psychiatrist for the world and teaching people how to do this and how to experience this stoic ability to last through even things like that and still come out okay. I remember when I joined the Army. Remember I mentioned how the drill sergeants come up and yell at you and you retreat from that that moment, and you let things happen. You watch it intellectually, so that it's not happening to you. Well, in a way, it's happening to your body, but the thing is, it's not happening to your soul or yourself, and so you can escape it. So, the Stoic point of view. I should mention the skeptics. Skepticism. And the skeptic is an individual that answers the question of the stresses in the environment by arguing, we really don't know. We really don't know. And so if one of the things that stresses you out are these kinds of philosophical questions, the best way to relax and not get upset about it is just admit, well, but we don't know. And that's a calming kind of, it's like a stoic reaction to it, right? And I'll go on then to Plotinus. And by the way, my most of my links, at least in this time period, are all based, I noticed, on the MIT Classics site, and they are all down. And that just happened like the day that I clicked on the Aristotle link and it didn't come up. That was the first I noticed it. And I've actually emailed one of the librarians. I said, do I have to go look for other links, which, by the way, you can. I found others. I think I mentioned one in the email that I sent out. Right, there are others out there. Perseus Project is there, although that's difficult to read because you go paragraph by paragraph. It's not that you just read the whole page. But Plotinus. So now we're looking at, notice, 204 or 5 to 270 AD, or the Common Era, according to this page, right? And so we're going way ahead. One of his teachers was a Christian at one point, but that was Ammonius Saccas, but they apparently didn't remain Christian, or in any case, Plotinus didn't remain Christian. And so next class we will get into the beginnings of this religious period. But in this case, Plotinus is a Platonist, follower of Plato, but we also say he is a new Platonist, so they call him a Neoplatonist. And what's neat about Plotinus is that he, notice Neoplatonism, whatever that is, and there is a difference between him and Plato, and that is that he thought you could physically join the ideal world even while in this life. And the connection is math, and the connection is meditative techniques. And you know, the idea of math occurs, remember we talked briefly about the golden ratio, and my quiz question for you today is, what do you think of the golden ratio? Explore it a little bit more and try to see how that kind of mathematical thing can influence everything. Plotinus thought that mathematical characteristics of the universe could be connected directly to us through the physical universe, imitating it, and as a human being, he thought he had become part of the ideal world 4 separate times in his lifetime, where he basically, as we think of it, I don't think drugs were involved, but if you think lots of people that use LSD or hallucinogens of various sorts feel like they're able to mentally become part of the ideal world for a trip, basically. And that having that experience enables you to come back, and it transforms the way you view reality. And that's clearly part of what he was looking at. And music, talks about music, architecture, beauty, lots of things. And he's clearly using the golden ratio as part of that. By the way, pi is very similar to phi, or phi, you pronounce it phi, right? In that they're both, help me with the correct explanation of this, they're both infinitely non-repeating decimals. Did I say that right?
Yeah. I mean, you can just say irrational numbers.
Okay. I don't like irrational as much, though. I like infinitely non-repeating.
It's not irrational based on what is like.
Rational seems a little.
It's irrational because it's non-ratio. It's not a ratio. It's not a fraction.
Aha! You know, if I had a second life, I would want to be a mathematics major.
You should join us in the math department. It's great over there. We're not nerds, we swear.
Well, have a good day. Be safe out there in the snow. If you're driving, be safe. Come back on Monday alive and well and all that sort of thing.
Alive, well, no problems.
If you feel like reading ahead, look at the Christians. We're moving on towards Augustine. Everybody having fun?
Yeah. How are you?
Do I worry too much about having fun? And everybody having fun?
Probably, I don't know. Keep it lively with jokes, so.
I was raised Roman Catholic, though, and so I feel guilty about everything, and I don't really feel very comfortable unless I am feeling guilty. Dependent on the feeling that, you know, I'm miserable, you know, failed human being, you know, with, you know, all the good Roman Catholic vibes. Had the nuns, you know, I remember the first grade nun, Sister Mary Immaculate. That's where George Lucas got the idea for Darth Vader. And so,
I got a question for you. Is it mostly more Christian based than philosophy based? God's supposed to be omnipotent, right? And Jesus is God. But Jesus, as a human, has to learn, right? So couldn't you make an argument then that God isn't really omnipotent, more just infinitely smarter?
well,
Wise?
you get the difficulty, of course, in multiple levels. You know, how do you reconcile Jesus being God? Of course, an awful lot of Christians don't think of Jesus as God, but as instead as kind of a model that is divine in many ways because of his behavior and his teachings and so on. But if you believe in the resurrection and those kinds of indications that he was literally, somehow God made man, you have an awful lot to try to explain. The one that I really enjoyed reading on these issues was Pope Benedict XVI, or Joseph Ratzinger, and he basically explained the Trinity by saying that in our language, in our discourse, we need God to account for different things. For example, why there's anything, creation, and even the Big Bang or any of those scientific explanations still don't really get to the heart of why there's anything instead of nothing. Why was there a Big Bang? Where did it come from, etc. So we say that it's there because God started it, right? And of course you can eventually get to the point, well, where did God come from? What started God? And that's something that Augustine discusses. But we also need the concept of God to represent humanity. And so Jesus, in that sense, says, at my understanding of Joseph Ratzinger's explanation of this, and he was Pope until he died just recently. Actually, he retired, etc. But his argument is that Jesus is that role model for us that we think of as if God and the principles of the good life that God gives us. I mess